day. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Ruth Murambadoro. Today I'm co-hosting with Professor Mzukisi Qobo, who is the head of school in the Wits School of Governance. We will be kick-starting the first of what we hope will be a series of the masterclass we're doing on writing. And I just want to start off by maybe just checking with every one of you, really, what do you think, you're expecting out of this workshop that we're doing, this engagement we have today? Maybe you can just drop me a chat in the box on what it is you are expecting of this gathering. Whilst you are doing so, I just want to give you a heads up of some of the house rules we follow. Some of you are joining us from Facebook, others are joining us here on Zoom. We welcome you both. Just take note that if you have a question that you would want to raise, you can make use of the comment box. You can also make use of the Q&A function, particularly on Zoom. We have the Q&A function. If you are on Facebook, you can make use of the comment box. We do have people that are assisting us to get through to your comments. We will try as much as possible to attend to them. If time permits, we might also allow you to raise your comment verbally. So you will be allowed for your mic to be unmuted and you raise your comment. Please try to keep it very, very short. Otherwise, I hope you are here to enjoy this moment we have. It is really an honor and a pleasure for us as the Wits School of Governance to welcome you and engage with you. I don't know, Prof. Mzu, you want to just say a shout out to the group before we get into the business of the day?
So great, just to welcome everyone who is here today. We have over 500 participants. So this is really wonderful. And we both, Ruth and I are looking forward to sharing our experience, to sharing our, what we know about writing, and also just to get your feedback at the end. As we said, we hope that we will do this again. There will be part 2 and part 3 to it. So please stay tuned with us. Ruth, over to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Mzu. I'm not so sure if I've yet seen any comments from people around why they are here today. I see Uvarajan Naidu says, I'm busy doing my master's in management, and oh, now the comment has disappeared. But welcome for that. One other person, Bongani, says, my expectations from this class or a series is to improve my professional writing skills. Someone says to translate academic findings into public policy and media sound bites. This is Michelle Small. Welcome, Michelle, and thank you for your inputs. Also, just another comment from Amanda. I'm expecting to be introduced to ways within which one can improve writing style, journalistic versus academic writing. Definitely, we hope to touch on some of these matters in our discussion today. I just want you to take it as a conversation that we are having. We're not necessarily presenting ourselves as experts, but rather drawing from our own experiences, what has made us able to communicate in different mediums through our writing. But really, a critical question that each writer should think about is why write? Right? Why are you writing? Why do you want to write? Why will you write? Those are critical questions that you have to think about. George Orwell, who's really one of a commonly known novelist, I think for some of you who did literature in high school, of course, this might be a test of the time when you went to high school, but those who did literature and read the book Animal Farm, George Orwell is the writer of that book. And he says, I write because there's some lie to expose, some facts to which I want to draw attention, and my initial concern is to get a hearing. So really, it's just really, there's something burning for you and you want people to give you an ear. You want audience for this burning issue that you want to put across. And Mary Flannery O'Connor, who's also a novelist, of course, there has been currently issues around her work containing some elements of bigotry, but then we will look into that just shortly. What I want to point out from what Mary O'Connor said about her writing and why she wrote during her time is, I don't know what I think till it is written, which is as good as the answer, the writing itself. So from here, you can draw the understanding that sometimes we constantly thinking about things we seeing, we experiencing, and we feeling. And from there, we don't know really how to manage all these encounters that we've engaged with. And one way to do so in the sense of accounting for those feelings, experiences, and encounters is to really pen them down. And you can then see from the moment you have penned it down, you're able to relate with your emotions, your experiences, and your feelings. Really, this is just some thoughts of why, some of the people who've written different genres of writing exist, but what informs their process of writing. I guess what remains important to remember is the subject of what we write is shaped by the space we occupy. And here we can think of space in terms of it being absolute, relative, relational, or metaphysical. I can give you an example of a relational space, of space being relational in the sense that the way you encounter a particular environment that you're occupying and the particular entities within that space informs how you will be relating with it and the experiences you draw from it, and also the expressions you give to it when you are to pen down that. So you cannot necessarily ignore how you're relating with your environment, because that really shapes the subject of what you write. Somebody who is writing from America, somebody who's writing from Kenya, from Zimbabwe, from South Africa, really would relate with the same subject matter from a slightly different angle, particularly because the space they're occupying really informs and shapes what they will put down on paper. So we cannot ignore that. Hence, the question of positionality and gaze remains important when we are thinking about writing and what we write. Of course, we have to take note that every writer embodies an emotional attitude, and that informs our thoughts, feelings, expressions, and encounters. As such, what we write is fueled to a large extent by the weight of our emotional and intellectual load. And here, when we're thinking of the emotional load, you're thinking about that encounter. For example, if you're somebody who wants to write to a certain extent about racism, if you want to write about gender-based violence, there's an emotional load that you carry from either an experience, an encounter, a witnessing of the matter that you want to write about, be it racism, be it GBV, be it a lack of service delivery. So you cannot necessarily ignore those emotions and how they will shape your phrasing and interpretation of the situation. Of course, the intellectual load now relates to the amount of information that you have. Where are you generating that information from? And really, those are some of the things that I do believe Prof. Muzu is going to touch on. Of course, what we need also to take note is that writing, apart from speaking and seeing, right, is the most human activity. When we write, we answer why we write. We reveal more about ourselves than we know. Hence, people tend to say, if you want to understand what somebody is going through or has been going through at a particular time, look at their piece of writing. It really gives you an encounter of what they were experiencing at a particular time. If you look at scholars such as Achille Mbembe, if you even look at Foucault, right, those matters that he wrote about, or the two of them wrote about, to a large extent are influenced by the encounters that they had, and they can now verbalize it through a written script. And in doing so, you are then able to engage with others. And we call this writing process a medium, right? That is readily available to anyone to express themselves and connect with minds of others in the current, the past, and the future. Of course, some useful reads that you might want to consider. It's Chimamanda Adichie, Chinua Achebe, Greg Gake, George Orwell, Tsitsi Dangarembga, Trevor Noah, and Barack Obama. I just want to mention why I'm listing some of these readings for you to consider. For me, when I started writing, it was coming from a space where I needed to relate with what I was encountering. And in doing so, I drew from my experience as somebody who's gone through tertiary education, and I've learned so much theories that helps us understand our social environment. But from there, I needed to draw in the realities that I was encountering and communicate how these in some ways conflict with what theory says, or in a way, demonstrate some of the growing debates that are coming up. So when you are doing so, you actually are able to relate with multiple debates, be it you want to talk about racism, you want to talk about GBV, about colonial encounters, all those venues of interacting with our social realities become useful as far as you're clear on the argument that you want to put across. And you will see every writer has a story they want to tell, and that story is their idea, and they need a channel to vocalize it. I hand over to you, Prof. Mzu.
Sure, thanks, Ruth. I'll share my slides in a short while. All right, thank you very much. I am just going to go back to the start. My name is Mzukisi Qobo, head of school at the Wits School of Governance. Thanks, Ruth, for that wonderful overview on writing. So I think the first thing to point out is that writing is underrated. Especially writing with clarity, and I hope today to be able to share my perspective on how to write clearly. Now, I want to state from the outset that the masterclass is less about the tools and the techniques of writing, because that would require an extended period. That would require for us to be in a formal classroom, even if virtually. But this is really for a few minutes to shape the thinking around writing, to touch on the mindset of a writer, and hopefully to give you confidence, if you have not started, to start to put pen on paper. And if you have already been writing, to improve, to take your writing to another level. So some say writing is a science, others say writing is an art, and I want to believe that it really is a bit of both, and especially an art. There are many people, including academics, who would like to write for the broader public and catch the attention of policymakers, of decision makers, but also who may want to write to influence public opinion, but they don't know how to, and they are writing lands before the eyes of the reader in a really very dry and rough way, and especially for academics, their work tends to be read by a very small community. So if you have 50 citations in your work, that's a lot. If you have 100 people who've read your work, that's a lot for an academic. There's also a lot of mystification about writing. Some believe that it's for very talented people, very special people. And I want to argue that that's not the case. It's not true. There was a time when I received 0% for 2 essays I wrote as a student. But also there was a time when I was a PhD student and I sent an article to one of the leading papers in South Africa. I was sitting somewhere in Warwick in the United Kingdom, and I got a rejection. I got this editor said, your topic, it's not what you've sent us is not newsworthy. It's not topical. We've had many people writing on this. I kept persisting, and many cases editors don't respond. The editors and don't take it for don't take it personally. The editors are really very busy. They wade through hundreds of articles that are trying to get into the paper, and if they were to respond to everyone, they wouldn't do their work. So they don't respond. They just send an article. They don't say thank you, we've received it, or a line that says thank you, we're not publishing your article. So if you get a rejection, you are very lucky, in a sense. So in my writing career, I've written over 200 opinion pieces for various newspapers, Business Day, the Sowetan, the Sunday Independent, and the Sunday Times. I was a regular columnist for the Business Day and the Sowetan, which means that every week you have to file an article. That I banned out, and then I moved to once every 2 weeks, and then later in my writing career as a columnist, I was writing once a month, and so I was writing to be paid. So I was a paid writer, but I had a carte blanche. I could write on anything I wanted to write about, so writing really is a practice. You can't pick up a book and say you're going to read this book and it will make you a writer. The very important thing is to start writing, and then you use books and other material to improve on what you have studied. I remember after receiving the rejection from the editor of a newspaper back in 2003, I went to buy this book, How to Become a Features Writer. I read the book, but still I was not I was not a writer. It was only later on started with letters to the editor, and then I became a columnist later on. Apart from that, I'm also an author. I wrote a book which became a bestseller in South Africa. It went out of print, and it went for a second print. The Fall of the ANC, co-authored with a friend, Prince Mashele, and this was published by Pan Macmillan. I've just completed a 76,000 words manuscript, a book on the political economy of US-China relations and implications for Africa, which will be published by Palgrave Macmillan later in the year. So my experience, the experience that I'm sharing, or the insights that I'm sharing, I'm not sharing them as an expert on writing, but as a practitioner on writing, as someone who has written. I've also written 3 policy papers for government. One was the current South Africa's trade policy and strategy framework. That was back in 2010. I wrote the international relations strategy for the Gauteng Premier's office, as well as a policy framework on curbing illicit financial activities, curbing the use of companies and other legal instruments as conduits for money laundering, and that was for the Department of Public Services and Administration back in, I think, 2015, 2016. So I've done a fair amount of writing. So not everything that I say is science. I'm not professing to be a scientific about my writing, but I have things that I've learned, both good and bad, and I'd like to share with you. Many people have, they have full-time jobs, and they want to to do writing, and they have huge ambition to write a book. They have a full-time job. They want to be columnists. They have a full-time job. Writing takes a huge amount of time, of emotional and mental energy, and it's exacting physically because you're sitting in front of the screen, thumping away a keyboard. So it's something, it's an activity to be taken seriously. You can't take it lightly. You can't be, you can't, even when you have a full-time job and you're writing as a columnist, it feels like a second full-time job because it walks with you. Once you file that column, you have to be thinking about your next column because the days are shorter, especially if you are a weekly columnist. It's better if you are a monthly columnist, i.e. you file once a month. Ruth talked about the reason for writing. You've got to have a very strong, powerful reason why you write. Because if you don't have that, you're going to quit. If you don't have a powerful why, you're not going to sustain it. So it's very important to be clear about your motives as a writer. Some don't want to be in obscurity. Some people don't want to be in obscurity. Academics worry that they're going to be in obscurity. Some people want, there are many things that people want. Some people want fame, and we'll talk about the different reasons why people write. So that's in a general sense. But once you're set on the desk to write an article, it could be a piece of policy, it could be a newspaper article. You've got to have a very strong purpose about that particular piece of work. Why are you writing this piece of work, and for who? Who do you want who would you want to read this work? Who is your audience? And what message are you putting across? It's also important, as Ruth said earlier, that you are aware of your prejudices, of your cultural limitations, of your social background, of implicit ideas or a worldview that shapes you as a person and therefore your writing. So you've got to engage with yourself in the process of producing a written work. And very importantly, though, is that you've got to treat writing as a craft and respect it as a craft. So writing confers a great sense of responsibility for those who take it up, and it's got to be respected. It's got to be respected for yourself as well as for those you are writing for. For yourself, because people don't know you. They've never fraternized with you. They don't socialize with you. They don't know who you like as a person, and they form an impression of you through your writing. If your writing is sloppy, they will say you are a sloppy person. They will not say your writing is sloppy. If your writing is full of prejudices, they will say you are a person full of prejudices. If your writing is terrible, they will say you are a terrible person. So your writing is a projection of your personality, not so much your character. That's a different story. But people form a view of your character out of the persona, which is what they see at first blush. So it's very, very important that for yourself, you take writing really, really seriously. If you're not sure, don't send anything out because people are going to form a view of you. For other people, people take time to work through your text. It's a valuable time. Those are minutes that they will never recover. So it's important that you take them seriously. So I thought I need to make this point. So why write at all? People have different views or different reasons why they write. They want to communicate. Primarily, writing is about communicating ideas. So people want to communicate ideas. They believe that they have something worthwhile they want to communicate to the public. They want to share something with the public. They want to enter into a dialogue with the public. There's a point that everyone else is missing, and they believe that they have this point. They want to communicate ideas. Some people want to express themselves. I feel I just need to express myself. Some want to tell a story about an event, about an occurrence, about something they believe is of a public interest. Some want to influence public discourse, so they would fall in the genre that some call current affairs. So they want to write about the Zuma, the Zondo Commission, or the Zuma soap opera, or economic policy, or an aspect of public policy. They may want to write about the performance of municipalities. They may want to latch on the Auditor General's report and tell a story that is hidden in the report, but communicate it in a way that is intelligible, that is exciting, that is interesting, and that informs the public better. Some may write for a living, so they may choose any topic week in and week out that they think suits or fits the paper that they are writing for. Others may want to write to enhance their career progression. And this is the case for academics, especially. People would want to write journal articles, write books, etc. But that is not what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about this in future webinars. Some may write to be immortalized. They fear that when they've departed from this world, there is not going to be a piece of living word associated with them, and they want to leave a piece of word that lives eternally. So they want to be immortalized or to be famous. They want to be well known. People put in their CVs, "I'm an author," so it's a big thing today. Or in your LinkedIn profile, "I'm an author" or "I'm a writer." So others also may write, especially for the newspapers, in order to build their speaking profile. And it certainly did well for me as a public speaker as well. Most of my public speaking built on my writing as a columnist, especially for the business day. So because events managers in management teams in companies, whenever a company has an annual conference, they look for people who can share ideas, who can provide content. They also look for entertainers, but the content space has very few people, so they want people who can share content. So they may look at the material that you've produced in the public and want you to come and share with their audience. So it's very important to be clear about why are you writing and what you're writing for, because that's going to help you to approach your writing differently. A number of people would bring drafts to me, supposedly for newspaper publications as opinion pieces, and we're going to talk about what do newspapers look for if you're writing for a newspaper. What exactly are they looking for? And I'm going to share later on a slide that has insights from one of the global, premier global papers. Some people, bring material to me and say, "Can you please look at this?" And I would look at the draft, and very clearly, it's not publishable. And it reminds me of the time I was sitting in Warwick, sending an article to an editor, and I was turned down. And thankfully, for my ego at the time, the editor explained very nicely that they've had many people writing, but a lot of people don't explain it to you. I've had, for example, people writing about their personal stories, something that happened to them. that they went to their home affairs or another government department. They were treated badly, or their relative was treated shabbily, or they say a public servant wanted to solicit a bribe, whatever the case may be. And this story, it's they're very revealing things in the story, but this is not the story that can go to a newspaper, because you are accusing public servants without a proof. That's what the editor will think. We don't know the context. What happened for you to feel that you were treated badly? And this is your personal story. The reader, when they read this story, will wonder, why do I need to know about this? I know many of such stories back at home, or my relatives in Mamelodi or in Khayelitsha go through the stuff that is narrated here. But why do I need? Why does this person get the privilege of having to write? So the editors have to think about stories in a global sense, in a universal sense, in a way that will appeal to their readers broadly. You can take an incident as the basis of a bigger story that you want to tell, but don't make it to be about that incident. Universalize it, broaden it, and that takes a skill to do. And hopefully, if you come to us to the in the courses that we offer, we can walk with you through the journey of writing, through the journey of putting those building blocks in place. Some would come with an academic treatise. You write this 1,500 words. It's full of academic jargon or disciplinary jargon, that is jargon specific to a discipline, and you can't work with it as an editor. So if you were to, it's even difficult to comment on the work. It needs to be rewritten altogether, to be written afresh. And I'm going to talk towards the end about how to deal with some of those problems. Before I continue, I do want to scare you, though, that writing is writing is not a rocket science, and anyone who is committed to writing can develop the art of writing. And I just want to, at this stage, share a very short anecdote. When I started writing for the Sunday Independent, I was not a columnist for the Sunday Independent, but a group of us, there were three of us who were writing a lot in the public. We were part of a group called the Midrand Group at the time. I think it was around 2012 and 2013. And we had a clear purpose of influencing public opinion politically. We had very strong views about the state of our politics back then. And the editor of the Sunday Independent said, look, you have the middle page of the paper, which is the prominent opinion space. You can write on, that was Makudu Sefara at the time. And he had me, that is, he said this to the 3 or 4 of us back then. And he approached, was one of the first people he approached, because he had me give a talk at UNISA back then, and he asked me to start writing. I remember one article I wrote and sent to the deputy editor, was responsible for the features page of the newspaper. I thought this was a great article. And the paper is published on Sunday, so our deadline was Thursday. If you want your article to go through, it must be in on Thursday. On Saturday morning, I get a call from the editor, Makudu. He says, look, your piece is insightful, but it's not for the reader. It's very bland. It's dull. There is no color. There is no character. I can't feel human beings in your piece. All I see are words and facts. Can you rescue this piece? I'll give you an hour, because, as you know, the paper is to be out tomorrow. The paper has been produced, but there's a space there that is waiting for this piece. I was depressed because I'm now under pressure. I had to rewrite the entire piece using imagining individuals, imagining context, bringing a lot more of my personal voice. And I'll talk about this very briefly, how the best way to bring your voice out when you write a piece without self-referencing. That is, I was walking, I walked through inside a bar and I found two people brawling and I went in to try and separate them and I knocked sense into that kind of thing to take, because as a writer, you always have to take attention away from you without losing your voice. So as a starting point, as a hook to universalize the piece, that is to broaden it out, right? So that was my biggest learning in writing, and I'm thankful to Makudu Sefara. He is now the editor of Times Live. And I've since learned lessons from various other editors. Peter Bruce at the Business Day, he took a chance on me. I was not a known, even though I had written for the Sunday Independent, but I was not a known writer. That was in 2014, and he said, look, I want to give you a gig as a columnist. And at the time, the rate was R2.50 and a word. And I said, I'll take it. And I started to write for the Business Day. And then Songezo came in and he gave me very useful suggestions on how to improve my style. And also, so allow people to speak to you, to speak to your writing. Don't hide your writing until you send it out because it's late by then. So allow yourself to be vulnerable by giving people your work to comment on it. So what do newspapers look for? So I've borrowed this from the Financial Times guideline for people who want to write features or opinion pieces. So I just want to credit it, but I've also weaved in my own insights into it. The first thing that the editor thinks about is their readers. They're not concerned about you and your idiosyncratic stories. That is, stories that pertain to your personal issues, that are your parochial surroundings or your pain. No, because they have to sell newspapers to start off with. So they think about their readers. They think about their readers. What are their readers going to say, to think about the paper when they read your piece? So they say that this paper gives you the chance to talk to a trader in Hong Kong, a professor in Paris, and an engineer in the Silicon Valley, all at the same time. So these are different people wearing different hats. They have different professions. So you've got to appeal to all of them, right? For one of the examples they use, which a friend of mine, Wandile Sifra, when we talk a lot about writing with Wandile, we comment on each other's writing. He's one of the very, very few people who have taken who's a subject specialist, an agricultural economist, and made it sexy, so to speak. And he graces the pages of the Business Day every week. He writes for Fin24, I think News 24, every other week. So his writing has appeared in Project Syndicate. His recent article was on Conversation. He's the only person I know of who's taken a narrow subject and made it and gave it a broad appeal. Now, the Financial Times says, if you write about, say, farming in Minnesota, you've got to demonstrate how does this moves the stock market in Hong Kong. So you've got to make connections that kind of give your piece some universal visage, some broad appeal. So you may start with the local, but that's not where you end. You start with the local and you end at the global. The second element that the paper highlights that's very important is write about what you know, and in an interesting and unique way. Don't pick a subject you know nothing about, because you'll be caught out. Readers will know. You're not writing for the masses. I mean, there are papers that have a mass appeal and they're doing great, and I've written for some of them. The Sowetan is one of those. But some papers are quite, they have a niche audience, like your business day is a paper that is read by an academic, or blue chip companies, chief executive officers of JSE listed companies, broadly the middle classes, the students, researchers, policy thinkers, etc. Now, if you write, if you look at the Conversation, which is a wonderful platform that's been configured to help academics to write in an accessible way. So you have to think in broad sense, but also writing about what you know, because if you don't, the 10% that reads the paper that knows something about the subject will feel shortchanged by the paper. So it's very important that you write about what you know, but do so in a unique and in an interesting way, i.e. in a way that's not been done before. One feedback you'd likely to get often is that this subject has been written to death. Once an editor says that, then you are in trouble, because there's no more space for you to write on that unless you craft a unique angle, that is an angle that has not been explored before, or a contrarian view. You're going against a popular view on this subject, and you're marshalling compelling evidence, rational argument, very strong points to back up the angle that you chose. Write clearly and accessibly. Your piece must be enjoyable and not an academic treatise. That's one of the guidelines in the Financial Times set of guidelines. Use specific examples and avoid abstraction. Remember my conversation, or my interactions with the editor of the Sunday Independent later now, when I had been invited to write, when I was told that my article was bland and had no color, had no character. Use specific examples, yes, but avoid abstraction. And if you bring numbers in a way that is easy to digest. Bring numbers in a way that tells a story. Don't use numbers as ends in themselves. Use numbers in a way that tells or improves your story. So these are very important. Be pithy and sharp. You don't have much space. You have 600 to 800 words. A newspaper will give you 600 to 800 words. That's the dominant space. Those are the dominant spaces in the paper. You may have one space that is reserved for essays of about 1,200 to 1,500 words, but those are hard to get through, because even if you were to write that essay, to keep people engaged through a 1,200 words piece takes a lot of skill. So many editors are going to push you back to 600 to 800 words. This also applies for policy briefings. Policy briefings, usually, if you look at many government policies, or plans, say the national development plans, it goes, hundreds of pages. If many other government plans are, hundreds of pages. But a policy brief that will get the minister's attention, if you're a researcher or you work in a policy think tank, is something between 1,200 words and 2,000 words upper limit, because they want to read it while they are on a plane or on navigating through the blue lights on the highway to check what can they take something out of your policy brief. So it's very important to learn to write in a pithy and sharp way, straight to the point. For newspapers, in an interesting way. For a policy brief, in a very clear way with clear recommendation, clear statement of the problem you are addressing, why does this problem needs to be addressed, and why the solutions that you offer are better than others. So I hope so far I have been clear, and I just want to quickly get through the storytelling in writing. So storytelling is important for both newspapers and policy work. When you write, think about the narrative. You're telling a story. Don't write to just complete the thing and ship it out. Write to tell a story. And the reason why telling a story is very important in your writing is that people relate better to stories. People can read a 2,500 word essay from beginning to end if the story is told very well, but they may not finish an 800 words piece if the story is poorly told. And this is the reason why you are, for an example, able to finish a 500 pages book but battle with a 150 pages book. The distinction is how well the story is told. Are you great? Does the writer get you? Does the writer get you, right? And keep you engaged throughout. So it's very important that you think about storytelling when you write, whether you're writing for policy, and of course you will tell your story in a different way when you're writing a policy brief or a policy note than you would when you write for a newspaper, and also you are restricted by the length of in the two different platforms. And one way to improve your storytelling ability as a writer is to read your work aloud. First, read it aloud silently. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but listen to your voice silently in your head as you reread the text, and then actually read it aloud. You will discern how ridiculous sometimes the stuff that we write when you read aloud, because now you're forced to listen to what you've written. Does it put you to sleep? In the process of listening to yourself, does your mind wander to think about other things? Because if that happens, it's worse on the reader. So back to the first point I made, you've got to take writing very seriously. You've got to take the reader very seriously. William Zinsser says that narrative is the oldest and most compelling method of holding someone's attention. Everyone wants to be told a story. Always look for ways to convey your information in a narrative form. I don't need to explain this. Now, storytelling and writing, so this is what I've said, people respond to storytelling. It appeals to both the mind and the emotions. It makes writing come alive. It gives it humanity. Your audience feel and connect to you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I've already said quite a bit on this. For those who want to influence the public opinion, just really basic points about simplicity and clarity in your writing. Demonstrate understanding of the policy issue that you want to influence, or you want to convey alternative views on. you know, if there's theory in your work, it's got to be relatable to practice, and a lot of theory in your writing does lose you a great number of people who may read your story or your policy. And importantly, policymakers look for usable inputs. They don't care about what what Marx said back in the 1800s, or what an obscure thinker said. They just want usable insights, usable inputs. So that's how their mind operates. That's how their mind works. And you've got to understand the mind of a policy decision maker. I mean, this is I've touched on this a bit. I've also covered this just in the interest of time, and I will make the slides available. So I do want to touch on some of the tools, the general tools that can help you to improve the quality of your writing. And these are really, really simple. I mean, there are people who will teach you about grammar, will teach you about syntax, will teach you about trees, how words and phrases hang together on the tree of writing, very technical stuff. This is not about that. You can always read about that stuff in books or attend classes that deal with those specific areas. And I will be honest, I've not mastered all of that myself. And certainly it's useful, but the most useful thing is to get you going in writing, in your writing as an art form. So these are the different platforms that you can explore: blogs, newspapers, policy insights, academic journals. I don't want to talk a lot about these for now. I've spoken about what you could write about, but I just quickly here, you don't have to be an expert first on an issue, but you need to know a lot about an issue without being a certified expert. You need to show that you've researched the issue. I mean, take Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I follow very closely. He's not an expert on reparations, but it took time to absorb the history of slavery in the US, to look at different processes and different developments that have happened over time. He looked at the reparation movement, and he's written a book that captures much of this, and this is for public, to an accessible book for the public. So you have to have a certain degree of mastery of the theme you want to write about, not absolutely to expert level in order for you to write. I gave you an example of this friend of mine who comes from agriculture and has written in a way that many people who don't come from that field find understandable, intelligible. And they write to him. He shares some of the things that people write to him to thank him for bringing this subject to the public. What kind of writer you are, it's important to have an identity as a writer. Are you a fiction writer in the grand proposal genre? This is just really for for humor. But some people don't know what they are writing about. They go to a party, they meet friends who are writers, and they are asked, what are you writing about? And they make up stuff that I'm a fiction writer in the grand proposal genre. Now, this is very, very important, and this is the point. I'm going to end at this point. Now, one of the best ways to improve your writing is a very underrated activity, which is rewriting. Now, let me be very, very clear on this. There are people who write an opinion piece once. They put it on spell check, and that's it. They ship it to the editor. I'm very, very scared of doing that. Extremely scared of doing that. My drafts have 5 versions. So my drafts go through 5 iterations for a newspaper article. So the first writing, the writing after spell check, writing for coherence, writing to fix language and typos, writing for grace and clarity and simplicity. So it goes through. So writing is rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. There's no shortcut. Writing is an agony. It's a very painful process. I don't want to lie, but a hugely rewarding one. If you don't find writing painful, there's either something terribly wrong with what you're doing, or you are a genius. One of those two things. There's no middle way. Ask anyone who's been doing writing for years. Writing, you never get used to the pain. It's a painful exercise that we continue to do because we love writing, and there's an intrinsic reward that comes with writing. Most writers polish draft after draft. As Steven Pinker says, I rework every sentence a few times before going to the next, and revise the whole chapter 2 or 3 times before I show it to anyone. My latest book on the political economy of US-China relations is a 10-version book, meaning that when the manuscript was done, that was version 1, it's since gone through 10 versions in a 7 months period since I completed the first draft of the manuscript. So that's the kind of commitment you've got to show in order to express respect to yourself and to the reader. So if you can get the magic of rewriting, because that's how your writing gets improved. Rewriting sentences, William Zinsser says, professional writers rewrite their sentences over and over and then rewrite what has been rewritten. These are top writers. So most writers don't get it the first time. Rewriting helps you to improve conceptual clarity, to improve the quality of your writing. You encounter a lot of repetition and meaningless words when you do the rewriting. And I want to talk about just the last point that will, I think, in my view, based on my own experience, take your writing to the next level if you do it consistently and religiously. It's on the use of active versus passive voice in your writing. You don't have to be an expert writer to figure this out. One example of a passive voice is the failure to build a decent public health care system is attributed to weaknesses in state capacity. By the time the reader finishes that sentence, they want to take a nap. It's flat. That's what most policy writing looks like. Active voice, state capacity weaknesses generate failures in healthcare systems. Shorter, right to the point. You can't sleep. I mean, these are not perfect examples. Another example of a passive voice, the robber was hit by a bullet while running for cover. Active voice, the police shot the robber as he tried to hide. Passive voice, rules governing liquor sales have now been relaxed and trading hours revert to the status quo. Active voice, people are now allowed to buy liquor at regular hours. So you've got to avoid as much as, I mean, there is a place for passive voice, but limit its use. If you practice using active voice in your writing, you are onto something. And I keep on practicing some of these tools. This is but one of the few tools that we teach in our writing course. In the interest of time, let me leave it at that, and I'm going to take a few comments and then pass it back to Ruth.
Thank you, Prof. I think I had jotted a few that were directed to you. Sorry, I have to change room. I have a little one running around, so my pardon if you also getting echoes. So there was a question around, how do we untangle the writer's block, which some people tend to encounter, leading to constant procrastination on completing a project that they may be working on. And I think maybe we might want also to tackle the question around developing confidence, which relates to an extent on the matter you've raised about the voice, but maybe how do we tie it on to building confidence as a writer? Those are some of the comments I've picked, and I think I can add on a third question there, on how then do we construct an argument that helps us to shape any piece of writing we may be doing. I know some of you have asked about literature review, journalistic versus academic writing, PhD and research report, as well as the open ed or writing a book. I will attend to those. For now, I can throw this to you, Prof, to address.
Sure, thanks. I won't answer all the questions because of time. At the end of the slide, there was a very important slide I wanted to show, but we'll share the slides with all the participants. It's all the books that have shaped my own or contributed to my own writing. And I wanted to talk about each one of them, but I'm not going to do that. Unfortunately, maybe in the next masterclass, there's something that each book offers, for shaping writing. Now, I want to talk about the writer's block, and it's a favorite subject of mine. The writer's block is a religion. It's either you believe it or you don't. I've decided not to believe the religion of a writer's block. And as a result, I don't have a writer's block. It might surprise many of you. It's not because I'm a genius in writing. I told you that I used to get 0% and some other time 45% in my essays. I've had lots of journal articles rejected. Very few academics admit. I take it that I'm one of the few who have rejection. I still do have journal articles rejected to this day. I do have articles rejected that I send to papers. So I might be a wrong teacher for you, but it gives me confidence to talk about writing. Now, I used to write to be paid for writing. If you ask any columnist, no columnist will ever have a writer's block. They will never send a note to the editor and says, this week I'm not filing, thanks to the writer's block. It just doesn't happen. If you believe in writer's block, you are going to have the writer's block. If you don't believe in the writer's block, you are not going to have the writer's block. If someone gives you an assignment today, you said you were writing something and you had a writer's block, someone enters by the door and gives you 1 million rands and say, I want a 5,000 words essay. The writer's block will run away. There are, however, emotional blockages to writing, and I will not dismiss this. A friend of mine, Prof. Thaddeus Metz, and I used to run this course at UJ when we were both there, how to overcome emotional blockages to writing. And this could relate to trauma, relate to tensions that people may have had in their family, or something happened in their personal lives that just paralyze their creativity or their ability. Some people use trauma, they lean on trauma to churn out a lot of writing. When some people, when they are upset, they can't be creative in their writing. When I'm upset, I write a lot. But that's not writer's block or non-existence of writer's block. It's something else we need to deal with, which we attribute to writer's block. So I want to suggest to you that writer's block is a fiction. If you believe it, it will happen to you. Developing confidence in writing, the simple answer I will give you is that it only comes through doing writing, not reading a lot about writing. and I want to make this point. I know it's contrarian. Don't go and read a lot about writing before you do it. Do the writing and then read to improve. Be comfortable with rejection. Once you are comfortable with rejection, you slowly you gain confidence in writing. And finally, do share your writing with a friend or with someone who knows something about writing, and ask them to do track change and to to give you unlimited comments. And as the more you work through those comments, the better you become as a writer and the more confident you are. When I get a rejection, I don't think, oh my, oh my Lord, have ceased to become a writer. I go on. I improve. If they've given me comments when they rejected, I take those comments, incorporate them, improve, send it to another paper or another journal platform. It's just that.
Prof, you've left me wondering if we should make you upset much more so that we can have more outputs from you. But I know that was meant to give us a bit of humor. I mean, this should be a much engaged conversation we're having, and we love all the those elements of reality that you make us lean on by tapping into your wisdom and your experience of writing. I think some of the things I take from you, which help me to answer some of the questions that have been raised, is really about the question of knowing who your audience is, and that cannot be taken away from any writing experience or any writing project you want to do. So some of you are here in the process of writing your research proposal. Maybe you want to start a column, or you want to become a columnist, you want to start writing opinion pieces, you want to start a blog, you want to write your thesis, you want to write a policy report. Firstly, do research. What is the standard of writing expected by the audience that's going to digest the work that you're doing? That should be the first point we all need to take note of. And from there, you can then lean on to the quality of writing. There's been a question on whether we can still reference whether you're doing an opinion piece or things like that. As far as what you're writing relates to work, that has been written by other people, and you're building onto that argument, there is no harm in citing. And there are various ways of doing references for a proposal, for a research report, for an opinion piece, and all those things, which are really nitty-gritties that we might not necessarily have the space to cover now. Maybe in later series, we can begin to delve onto that. There has been a question around literature review. How do you do literature review? I think this is quite a broad discussion that we can have. For some of you who are already enrolled with us on the Masters by Research and PhD program, we do have a series of workshops where we cover some of these matters. But just to make it a bit brief, I think it remains important to have clarity on what your research question is and what are the key concepts informing your work. From there, you're then able to get direction on the kind of literature that you need to read to gain a better understanding and clarity of the question that you want to put across. One thing that I learned, through my experience of writing and rewriting is that your question is never fixed. So is the literature that you're engaging with. It's never fixed. So one can never get to a point where they say, I've done literature review, I'm done. It's never a done deal. It's a continuous process. It's very iterative. And from literature review, you consistently refine your ideas. And often the more you read, even much more broadly, the better your understanding of the phenomena is. I always get worried when a student gets so fixated on a theoretical framework or conceptual framework or, just one idea, and fail to realize that, your idea is just but part of a conversation you're trying to join into. What do others say in relation to that conversation? And what can you draw in to ensure that you refine your idea, and in doing so, you bring clarity to what you want to write about? Of course, there's often the question that, so writing, is it different when you're writing an opinion piece, or a research report? One thing to bear in mind is often people make the mistake that I'm writing my research report for examination. So really, you're just then fixated at finishing that research report or a thesis, and forget that there is still an audience that wants to read. So as much as, you know, the issue of storytelling and narrating your work might seem like it's something for a person doing an opinion piece or, you know, literally work, but your examiner also needs to be enticed to the work that you're doing. That's why it becomes very, very important for you to craft your work as if you're to publish it, it should be in a state that, you know, can be accepted by a publisher. So don't think as an afterthought that my research report, I will then convert it, because that's where some people have challenges with trying to convert a research report or a thesis into a manuscript. Of course, we can have also other sessions on how to develop manuscripts, drawing on our experiences. I managed to publish my PhD research as a manuscript post the completion of my doctorate. But I just wanted to tease out that some of these matters are really important to take note of. Prof, I can hand over to you for any notes you want to raise in closing.
In closing, colleagues, I've tried to answer some of the questions on chat line, and please forgive me, we had 504 participants, so it's difficult to answer everyone, but I really just want to thank you for attending this masterclass session. And as I said, we, you know, I don't want people to say, these two academics that style themselves as expert on writing, yet they don't talk about grammar and language and syntax. We're not styling ourselves as such. We simply just wanted to share what we've learned in our journey on writing. And if there's one thing that I want to leave you with, is that if you want to be a writer, you can be a writer. It's not for special people. There's someone who became an editor. I mean, I'm not going to mention names, whose writing was appalling when I first saw their piece, and before they were editor. And they became one of the finest essay writers on papers, and I wouldn't miss their essays. So don't be discouraged. If you want to be a writer, you can be a writer, but you've got to put in the hours and the commitment. We're hoping to bring in a part 2 and part 3 of this series. Please give us feedback if you've enjoyed it, and also send us some suggestions so that we can improve both the content and delivery. Once again, thank you so much for joining us in the morning to the afternoon, and we're hoping to see you again in our future webinars.